Wendy's Coffee House. The book Mysterious Beauty, Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley.
So I went in and I sat down and I got pencil and paper like I was told and sat there and lost 2 hours of time.
This is part 2 of my interview with Dr. C.S. Matthews and the amazing experience she had with a spider. This is a shamanic type of experience. In your blog, when you're the Trinity talking about an experience you had, and you were told by an indigenous person that, oh my gosh, that's not supposed to happen to somebody besides, the indigenous people. What?
Right.
So could you at least tell a little bit of that?
Well, I mean, I can tell a little bit of it. I do. One of the things I do talk about in my blog is that there's another blog, another interview I do with Stephanie Quick that's on the website where I do talk about that experience in detail. It was a very complicated experience, but basically I was going through I'll just try to summarize it. I was going through a very, very difficult period in my life. This was many years. It's probably been over, it's been maybe 40 years ago, so it's been a long time ago. It's like I keep having to remember, oh yeah, we're past, it's 2022 now. I keep thinking it's 2019. But it was probably about 40 years ago, and I was going through a really difficult experience in my life. It was an emotional experience. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where, you're just crushed by stuff, and I had cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried, and, you get to the point where you can't cry anymore.
Yeah.
You're just sort of emptied out,
Mm-hmm.
your body just says stop.
Done.
So I had gotten to that point. So I was sort of in this open place, and I was working at the Kansas City Renaissance Festival at the time. This was 40 years ago, when it was a very different festival than it is now.
Yeah.
When I did that, it was closer to where my mom lived than where I lived, and so on those weekends when I was working, I'd stay at her house. And it was an October night, kind of like now, and it was pretty chilly outside, and I remembered that I had left my stuff, my clothes and stuff to change into for the night. I'd left it all out in my car. So I was going to have to go out to my car. So I went out to the car, and as part of the context, my mom lived in Overland Park. You're familiar with all these places, I take it. She lived in this townhouse that had this part of a partial porch that was partially enclosed, and on one side of it was living this really large orb weaver spider, one of those really big gold ones, the very large ones. And I had convinced her over many years that if the spider was outside, you could leave it alone. You know what I mean? You don't need to just summarily kill things because it's a spider. Yeah. and if it's outside, you leave it alone. And so she had started doing this. And every day it would draw its web up, and then at night it would rebuild its web. And by the time this event was happening that evening, it had maybe been there almost 2 months. It had been there a while, and I had gotten to the point where when I went in and out, if it was there, I'd say hi to it. So I'd go in and out. So what I remember is going outside to get my stuff in my car. It was a chilly night. It was one of those nights where there's no moon yet. I think there was a moon, but it rose later. And so all you could see was the sky, and the stars and everything. So I went outside. I said hi to the spider. She had started making her web. She made a massive web. It was really huge. It took like maybe an hour to make, because I watched her make it once. So I said hi to her. I went to my car. I was feeling this forlorn, sort of empty, open feeling. And as I stood by my car, I just sort of looked up into the sky, and I sort of just asked for help. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was just kind of like, I don't know how to get through what I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I experienced a presence, and it filled the entire sky, and it was female, and this light came through the top of my head and went through my back and out my back, down my spine, and then out the middle of my back, through the middle,
Mm.
And I just stood there, and I got these very distinct instructions. It was like, get your stuff out of your car, go inside to the house, get a piece of paper, get a pencil, sit down. It was like very distinct. It seemed like it went really fast, all of that. And whatever this presence was, it filled the entire universe. It was whatever it was that holds everything together. It was like all of a sudden all the stars came together, and whatever it was, it like filled the entire sky. And which, in Kansas, it can be a big sky. And so I went inside, and as I went inside, I glanced at the spider. Now, this didn't strike me at first. It didn't strike me until later. But she was already done making her web. So I'd already lost like an hour. But it didn't register to me at that time. She was finished, and she was just hanging in her web at that time.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I sat down and I got the pencil and paper like I was told and sat there and lost 2 hours of time. The only thing that I can remember is I felt like I was wrapped in like this orange web, like or egg, there was like an egg shape around me, and it was sort of an orangish red color. And I felt like the top of my head was open, and all of this stuff was being rearranged in my head. Didn't hurt. And when I came out of this state, I had written a poem. I don't remember writing it. I'd written a poem. And the poem is sort of like a power song. And the next day, because what I was doing at the Renaissance Festival was I was doing a musician thing. I was playing by myself and playing with another group and, singing and, doing that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
so the next morning, like a melody came to the song. And so it's sort of like my song, And when it came together, I just thought to myself, if I don't ever do anything else in my life, this song is kind of the essence of who I am. And it has remained that way. But anyway, this power is a power that is, I didn't recognize what it was at first for many years. It wasn't until I came across some indigenous references to an experience like that and how it is connected to this being that I realized, oh my God, that's what I experienced exactly. And so, when I told my friend about it, she was like, that's not supposed to happen to white people. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I don't know what that means really, but I mean, to me, I guess what it means is that these beings, these energies, they ultimately will do what they want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not like I sought it. I didn't go in search of it, and I don't make any claims for myself by virtue of it.
But she could recognize it and identify with it. And so is that the Spider Woman, the tail?
Yeah.
That's a very powerful being.
Yeah. That is what I have been made to understand that it is, yes. And what I do know about her is that she doesn't automatically come to everyone. At least, there are some groups that she does come to automatically, like, the Hopi know her well, and the Navajo know her well, and there are some other groups like the Choctaw and Shawnee know her well, know versions of her. But she's a little selective with everybody else. So, at least as far as I know. So, to me, it's a grace. I don't take it for granted. She's always given me good information. I don't like ask her about stuff like some people do, but I have asked her a couple of things at different times, and she always gives me the right answer. But if I'm really, really confused about something and I really don't know what to do, I just say, listen, I really don't know how to do this. And she knows how to do it. She just says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then this will happen. And then you do this, and then you do this. And it's always been right.
In her own representation, the spider that you were connecting to was like a finger, an arm, a thumb. It was an extension of her expression in manifest form. And so as you,
you mean
honored
in the spider? Yes.
Yeah, you honored the spider. You reached out and were receptive, and then you were also in trauma. You were incredibly vulnerable and needing help, and you'd already made peace in a way and expressed that respect. And so with that, then there is I think a reciprocity of you have earned it. You have demonstrated the valuing and the respect for that being, that essence, and so then it is available. The other cultures, they already know that. They've already done that work. That's centuries of stories of investing, and you just happen to be in your own being present and aware and respectful and receptive. And so then you develop the relationship. That's the way I see it. I don't see saints as having a specific purpose in one religion. I see if you're a saint, then all people are part of your crew, and they can appear to anybody. I've had that experience myself. I'm not Catholic, but I've had the saint experience, and it's extraordinary. It's not expected. I didn't ask for it, but we separate and label things so easily when I think that isn't in our best interest.
Yeah, I mean it's not useful. I mean if you listen to if you listen to my full account that I do with Stephanie Quick, there's actually a deeper, older connection to spider that goes back to my childhood and has a connection to a very specific event of trauma. And I didn't make that connection at that time. I didn't make that connection until just a few years ago, when it was like, oh, there's this and this and this and this and this. And I think that the relationship between me and that, whatever the local expression of that being is, I think that was established relatively early. And the interesting thing that I talk about in the Trinity blogs, which you read, obviously, is that there's a relationship with certain indigenous groups like the Apache and the Navajo specifically. They have an ongoing relationship, in stories at least, with the insect people, and they talk about the insect people. Are very close in the Apache world and in the Navajo world. It's a very close relationship. The insect people and humans actually mated at a interbred with each other at a certain point in order to sort of tame some of the wilder aspects of the insect people, which, considering what humans are like now, I kind of feel funny about that. Yeah. But what's interesting about it is that so many of the beings that are seen, especially the benevolent beings that are seen, are like the praying mantis people.
Yeah.
You hear about the praying mantis, alien people, and these two young boys who in that Trinity book who had this experience, they referred to them as praying mantis or insectozoid people. That's what they reminded them of. And that to me was really interesting, because it's like one of those details in a story that by the time they told their story publicly, they were aware of the larger UFO narrative. If they had wanted to, they could have made their story a lot more sensational than it is. And it's actually from a humanoid, thinking about extraterrestrial stories. It's a pretty tame account. It's pretty simple. This thing crashed, they saw it, they saw these beings, it kind of freaked them out, they went home, They snuck out a couple more times. The beings disappear. There's no indication that the beings were captured, that they were found by the military or anything. They're gone. So it's just really fascinating. Once I found out that the insect people were like really, really important in Navajo and Apache mythology, I was like, that's so weird.
Yeah. Well, but that means they've been here for a long time. To me, I think the Kachinas represent other entities, other beings.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, well, and they're real, and the Hopi are real clear about that. Mm-hmm. That and there are different types of Kachinas, and the various Kachinas come from different places. So, the Kachinas, they're very clearly beings that are different expressions of different parts of the world or different parts of different worlds establishing communication with us.
Yeah, well, it makes the world a whole lot, or the reality, a lot larger than just this, everything that you see in front of you that's physical or concrete is all that exists. It's like, no. There are multiple dimensions and different layers and levels, and the beings that we want to qualify or quantify as a physical being, such as the ETs that, whatever, name your preference for the ET, a gray or a white, whatever. I don't believe these are all physical beings. I believe some have the ability to appear physical, and we can engage in a physical manner with some of them, but I think they're transdimensional. I think we're not there yet in our abilities until we start practicing more out-of-body or metaphysical states of awareness that push us beyond this physical myopia, narrow-minded, narrow-sightedness that we have.
Yeah, our physical focus,
It's convenient, and it's very, very earthy, grounded. It's concrete. But if you've had a near-death experience, if you've had a spiritual awakening of any kind and had this contact with these other forces, it blows your mind, and all of a sudden things are open that you didn't know existed. And then living 9 to 5 every day with having this one focus on how much money can I make? How many houses can I own? How nice, all this, that goes away. It goes away. Not in a bad way, but in a, wow, what else is here?
Right. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, one of the effects that it's had on me is that I very rarely feel lonely. I feel like I'm surrounded by things all the time, by beings all the time. Yeah. And when I get into, or intelligence and consciousness, I guess, all the time. And when I get into, maybe a self-absorbed place where I feel sorry for myself about something, I mean, it's okay to feel sad about some things sometimes. But, I mean, there's a lot in our world to be sad about. But I just always have to remember that what I'm experiencing is not all there is. And not only that, it's not all there is in me. It's who I am is not the summation of all this crap.
Yeah, fortunately.
that I'm feeling right at the moment, Yeah. Uh-huh. And crap does not summarize my life, So it does help me to remember all of that. I mean, I do think that we've come into the world in order to experience certain things and to focus on certain aspects of it.
Dr. C.S. Matthews, also known as Dr. Wham, mysterious beauty living with the paranormal in the Hudson Valley. Wendy's Coffee House. Wendy's Coffee House, my guest, Dr. C.S. Matthews. Dr. Wham. Carol.
If there's any kind of a secret that the government has about stuff, I don't think it's a secret about, it's a secret about where the beings come from. I don't even think it's a secret about technology or anything like that. I think if there's a secret there, that the secret has to do with the nature of consciousness and the reality of spiritual force. Because obviously, if everybody knew that, it would change the world. It would alter the power dynamics of the planet. People just would not put up with stuff anymore, and not in any kind of necessarily rebellious way. I mean, maybe some people would, but in the sense that, most of our systems are in place because we've gotten the majority of people to buy into them.
Yeah, it's control. And people who are consciously independent, consciously aware, awake, and in tune with the larger forces are harder to control. They don't buy into that dynamic. They see that this is a power that is orchestrated to maintain, whether it's military or church, to maintain that as the focus. And once you get beyond that and realize those are just unique paradigms. They're not, each one has a certain recipe, and they will work as long as you play by those rules. The problem is when you get into the shamanistic views and the indigenous views, those rules don't apply. And that's where you lose control over the masses. So, you get into some of the stuff that they've done for years in terms of programming with commercials and, subliminal programs that are running to see how you can control people and manipulate people and work with their minds. And then you realize, well, we're pretty vulnerable. we can fall into those traps easily.
I just got a message from someone that has like this intense while you were talking, this intense guy, a Japanese guy, and he's saying Godzilla is in all of us.
Oh yeah,
Godzilla is in all of us.
Game on.
It's a beautiful thing.
Game on. When you're talking about these experiences, you have the audiobook. I got to listen to some of that. It's 12 hours for Mysterious Beauty. And the other ones that you've also published, this is a series?
No, it's what it is it's, I first published this ebook in 2017, and it's 4 short stories that all came out of a vision quest experience that I had. And I wrote all of these stories, like these 4 stories, in like 3 weeks. They just sort of came out, and like most of them came out pretty much as is, without a lot of editing. I mean, I did have like a professional editor look at them to make sure that my grammar was okay and everything. But in terms of substantively rearranging or changing the stories, they pretty much came out exactly as they are. And like one of them, which is the 3rd story in the series, it's called The Lynx. That whole story is a dream. That is like a dream that I had. Wow. And the only thing that's changed in it is, you know how dreams are.
Yeah. They're
not terribly linear. So I had to make it a little more linear, so that it could be written down.
Uh-huh.
But basically, that's a dream. And then in the introduction, I talk about where each one of these came from. The second story does deal with the emotional impact. It's sort of there are elements of it that are true, but it's the emotional impact of my having known Bob Berdella. So you know that story there.
Yeah.
So there are elements of my emotional experience.
For those who don't, Bob Berdella was a serial killer. He is now deceased, died in prison. But and he was innocuous. I went by him when I was doing the auctions, volunteering there at KCPT, the public television station, during their auctions, and Bob was there. He was a fixture. And so to be just interwoven within everyday society, and then to find out later the horrific background. Okay, so just there of a reference for Bob Berdella.
Right. And so there are some elements of that story that are true. Like some of it does, I do talk a little bit about, conversations that Bob and I had, and there was like one experience that I witnessed in the store when Bob threw some people out of his store that are part of the that are part of the story. So but the context of the story is different.
Okay.
I guess you would call it a palimpsest. You have these elements of things, and they're kind of put together in a different way.
Okay, so it's the name Final Season, a Lovecraftian quartet. That's the name of it.
That's the name of the whole volume.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I said, there's an introduction, and the introduction kind of provides the sort of a background for each story. Some of the stories have some weird precognitive. There were some weird precognitive things that happened, like for both the Lynx and in the first story, Sir Lytton's Confession. As I was writing them, or when I had the dream, for the story of the Lynx, I received information kind of intuitively.
Yeah.
That I did not know, that I was later able to verify, like the name of an energy company in Poland.
Oh, that's obscure.
Weird crap like that,
I always get upset when they give me stuff like that. Okay, and now what am I supposed to do with this?
I was like, well, I guess I'll put it in this story.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Because I don't have any other, use for this. But so just weird stuff like that, and weird synchronicities. The Sir Lytton's Confession had several synchronicities connected to it, which I talk about in the introduction.
On the cover here, the Wahaba Hadia Al-Mud, what is that?
That's my Sufi name. That's where Wham comes from.
Oh, that's it. Oh, yeah.
That's my Sufi name that a good friend of mine, she decided, being a good Midwesterner, that she was going to refuse to pronounce or spell it. So she came up with the acronym WHAM and has stuck. So that's where WHAM comes from. But when I published this book, I published it with the Sufi name. And so that's what that is.
Okay, yeah. But, and I've heard, I just wasn't, I'm like, wait a second, oh yeah, duh. Okay. Now I remember.
And if you pay very close attention and look at the cover of the book, just look at the picture of the cover of the book and pay very close attention to the last few lines of the last story in the book, you'll realize where that cover came from.
Ooh.
And I have to say, I have to give a plug to this guy. The guy who narrated both my books. He's a guy named Michael Hacker. He's out of Minneapolis, I believe. And he now makes his living narrating. He specializes in horror, weird history, weird fiction, paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
He has narrated 2 or 3 of Jacques Vallée's books.
Uh-huh.
And I hired him to do to read both these books. And I think he does a good job in Mysterious Beauty. I really like it.
Oh, I do. Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
I really like it. But he's really a reader of stories. And he does such a good job with the short stories in Final Season. He does such a good job that when I was listening to the stories, I was like, I wrote that? That came out of me? Oh my God. It was a very surreal experience. It was kind of like hearing the stories again for the first time.
Excellent.
Because I'm used to reading silently, and especially the last one, The Vortex. The Vortex is an odd story. It's the last story. I've never really understood exactly whether I liked it or not. It was like it came out. So it's obviously part of this set, right?
Uh-huh.
But I always had sort of an odd relationship with it. I never knew exactly what I felt about it until I heard him read it. And then when I heard him read it, I realized that's what was missing. It needs to be read out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Some stories you can just sort of read.
Yeah. But
some stories need to be read out loud, and that is one that needs to be read out loud because it has a whole different sort of feel to it when it's read out loud.
Theater of the mind. That's what audio does. Storytelling, when you're just listening without the visual, your mind fills in the blanks and then adds more,
And he just did a really good job. I think he liked that. I think he liked that story the best too, because he kind of told me he did, that there was something about that story that affected him in a certain way. Because the story is about the other side of, we talk about these disappearances, when people disappear.
Yes.
The Pallades thing. And the story is about a disappearance. It's a disappearance that comes as a result of human mistakes, but it's what happens to one person when they disappear. And so it's from the other side, their side of it, and realizing that they're never going to be able to get back.
Wow.
And I just think he did such a good job.
Yeah.
As I tell people, listen to the story, not because I wrote it, but because you read it.
Yeah, the storyteller guy, he's really cool. Listen, he's got a great story.
Yeah. He made the story something. He made it work.
But that's
But his name is Michael Hacker, and if anybody out there in Listen Land has a book that's in one of those areas, paranormal, weird fiction, science fiction, horror, whatever. He loves paranormal stuff, and they want to produce an audio book. You can find him on Audible. He's a person that you can look up there. They have like a list of people that work for them, and his name is Michael Hacker, and he is reasonable in his price. I mean, this is not a cheap process, okay, to do this. You have to be willing to pay $250 an hour.
Well, and Mysterious Beauty is 12 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So you know how much I paid for it.
Yeah. You just told us. There's a farm.
But yeah, well, and he's reasonable. I mean, it's like some people charge more than that. That's sort of like a medium level of expense.
Talent.
Some people charge a whole lot more than that. That's part of the reason why, some people will read their own book,
Yeah.
I can't read my own stuff. I can read other people's stuff, but I can't read my own. I get too, I get too caught up in, what did I say?
Why did I say it this way?
Why did I say it this way?
Yes.
Right, exactly. I start editing.
I was going to say, stop editing. Let it go. And that never stops. No matter how many times you rewrite it, it's like, I could have done this. Why didn't I do that?
Yeah, I know.
And it's just, you have to just at some point just get away from it and say, all right.
Yeah. And most people don't notice that, and it doesn't matter. I mean, one of the great things about the Audible version of Mysterious Beauty is that, I was unable to get it professionally edited. It's not bad. I've been told that it's not terrible.
Yeah, no, it isn't. I've got the book.
And parts of it are edited better than others. Like the whole second part, all of those stories, I had the people that I interviewed, I had them carefully read their own account, their own chapter, so that I would be saying exactly what they wanted me to say.
Yeah.
So in those instances, sometimes you preserve things that aren't grammatically perfect because that's what they want to say. That's part of the way they're telling their story. That's part of an interview.
The authentic.
There it is.
Authentic.
Yeah. So those chapters were gone over each one like 15 times. So they're much better edited. The other chapters, what ended up happening was that the person that I had hired to edit it, they flaked out, and so I had a printing deadline.
Oh no!
And so what I had to do was over a weekend, a 3-day weekend, I sat up. Like, I think it was 12 hours one day and 15 hours another day, and read the book out loud to myself.
Yeah.
And edited it that way.
That's brutal.
And it's not perfect, but what's nice about the Audible book is that it is apparently good enough that when you read it orally, it's okay.
It's fine. Yes. All that stuff is just like minutia. It's the story.
I mean, Michael read it well enough. I mean, I'm sure that he ran across some of the errors, and I know from my own knowledge of the book because of course now I've memorized practically wherever error is.
Yeah, I was like,
I've that he just corrected them.
Yes, why not?
You know,
yeah.
God love him. You know,
yeah.
Missed the comma here. Oh well, he just put it in.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's storytelling and audio. I mean, I've written for news broadcasting on radio, and it's a whole different thing than a print story in a newspaper. Completely different. You're talking to people, not at them. And the beauty is that whatever you wrote, listening to him speak it, I was just listening to the story and caught up in that.
Yeah. So anybody who wants somebody good to read their weird book, Michael Hacker's the guy to pick.
I love you forever.
I will advertise it. He's easy to work with. He meets his deadlines.
Yay.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, he took special care with the Mysterious Beauty book to make sure that we were getting the indigenous pronunciations as accurate as possible.
ProfessorWham.com, that's your website.
Yep. They can connect with me on Facebook, on Twitter, or with my Gmail, which is listed on the website. I'm like, what? By what? By what? They're going to do it by telepathy.
My socials. All my socials.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing the blog.
Yeah, in fact, I'm probably in the next few days, I'll be putting up another entry.
My guest, Dr. C.S. Matthews. Dr. Wham. Again, the audiobook available at Audible, Mysterious Beauty, Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley. They also include a PDF, and that is included in your Audible library when you buy the book. Paranormal doesn't just happen in one location, one place, one time, to one person. It happens to us all. Some places are more energetic, some people are more receptive. But when you experience it, reality is a whole new ballgame. And that's why I stay curious. I'm Wendy Garrett. Thanks for listening.